Namaste, friends, and welcome once again to Indic Vichar. And I am your host, Ajay Sudhame. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have esteemed panel with me. I start with Mr. M.R. Venkatesh, the famous chartered accountant, a famous panelist, a lawyer also, and he hails from Chennai, and but he stays also in Delhi these days, and he keeps on shuttling between Chennai and Delhi. So Mr. M.R. Venkatesh is a distinguished chartered accountant, and he's a very famous writer, author also on financial books. He has authored 6 books. The most famous being Sense, Sensex and Sentiments, which was written in 2011, and Mr. Dr. Manmohan Singh, A Decade of Decay. So, MR sir, thank you for being on Indic Vichar channel. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is entirely mine.
Our second guest is Mr. Muthuraman Natarajan, a friend of mine, and Muthu, thanks for coming.
Sure, my pleasure, Rajay.
Muthu is a very silent player and a man of few words and great acts. So he is a co-founder at Riverbridge Investment Advisors Private Limited, and he is also co-founder at Swarajya Mac. So that is his. Swarajya is one of the right-wing magazines, and I am so happy that he has taken this punt and brought Swarajya to where it is today. So great job, Muthu, and thanks for coming to Indic Vichar.
Well, thanks, Ajay. My pleasure.
And our third guest is Mr. Surendranath Chandranath, who is a noted columnist and a speaker on various Hindu topics. He is also an architect of Hindu Charter of Demands, and he is a consulting editor for Indic Today. He is also an IITian. He has also done his IIT from Bombay, right? And I also know Suren for a few years now. So, gentlemen, thanks so much for being on Indic Vichar, right? So we start with our questions, and so we just concluded the elections in 5 states on 2nd of May. So my first question is like that: how do you look at these results of 2nd May? And how should BJP look at it? The pluses and minuses, what are the positives and negatives? So I request Mr. M.R. sir to start the first answer.
See, I would look at it this way, that it has been entirely positive, notwithstanding the fact that Tamil Nadu and Kerala were never in the realm of power. And we have got 4 MLAs elected from Tamil Nadu. Of course, as a political party, the benchmark is always the number of MLAs that you win in any elections.
Correct.
So if that is the benchmark, or the percentage of votes is a benchmark, yes, it has done reasonably well. At least in Tamil Nadu, it has captured power with in alliance with the local party in Puducherry. And of course, Kerala is in a state of flux. And of course, given the state of affairs, it has done reasonably well. Having made this rather positive remark, I would also be very candid in saying it was yet another case of missed bus for the BJP.
Okay.
That in the sense, the highest per capita temple goer will be in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But yet, Hindutva doesn't get a place in Tamil Nadu for a variety of reasons. The Tamil literature, and there are 2 people who are in your panel, are from Tamil Nadu, can vouch this, that there is no literature in traditional Tamil which is about atheism. In fact, there is about Vaishnavism, there is about Shaivism, the entire literature is about the goddesses, and so many players of the Hindu mythology. But strangely, we don't adopt that lingo. Now the problem, I will tell you, this is slightly, I am simplifying the problem, though this is not to be looked at it this way, but I am simplifying for the sake of an imagery. Lord Shiva's family has divided India into 4 equal halves. Lord Shiva took the north, the mother took the eastern side, the eldest son took the western side, and the younger son took the southern side.
Correct.
Okay. Now this is how they have taken the entire country.
Okay.
Now your way to the entire Hindutva is, the first pit stop will be the youngest son, namely Lord Kartik or Subramanya, as we call him.
Yeah.
But if you want to appropriate Lord Subramanya, you have to do a series of steps. He is a Tamil god. See, nowhere you will find a Bengali god or a Kannadiga god or a Hindi god or even a Sanskrit god. But they may speak Sanskrit. That is entirely different. But Tamil language is the only language which has a god for it, which is in the form of Lord Kartik. Okay. So you have to understand your route to Hindutva is through Kartik.
Okay.
But BJP did put the right foot forward by starting the Vel Yatra. Vel means the fear of Lord Kartik, and it is his astra.
Correct.
But having started it, somewhere down the line, they felt cold feet.
Okay.
And they took 2 steps forward and 1.9 steps backward. And they came to virtually the same place where it was.
Where they started,
So,
okay.
Yes. So the Vel Yatra should have been taken to a logical conclusion. And it should have been taken to a much larger audience. And now today, if you look at it, and when I say today, I'm talking about this evening's news that I read somewhere, that there was some pro-temple decision by the new DMK government, in the sense of Srirangam temple. Though it is early days to predict it, but DMK now realizes that there is a subterranean Hindutva in flow in Tamil Nadu, and it cannot be as reckless as what it was in 60s and 70s.
Okay.
So the people want to align with BJP. The larger question is, does BJP Tamil Nadu want to align with the people of Tamil Nadu? That's the question. I leave it at that now.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Muthu, if you can take that question. How do you look at the secondary results?
Yeah. So the results are largely on the expected lines in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
In Pondicherry is a little positive surprise. And obviously, as in, I don't track Bengal politics too closely, except what I get to read in public sources. On the face of it, it looks like it was a huge disappointment there.
Yeah.
Kerala was in line with what was expected, and so was Assam. So in net, I think one minor positive in Pondicherry and a huge negative in West Bengal. Tamil Nadu, as MRV has said, as in the sense the NDA alliance was not so much in the reckoning. As in a sense, it at the end it did not, as in turn out to be a DMK sweep like most channels and others predicted.
Most of the people are.
But EPS government had done a reasonably good job in the last 4.5 years since Jayalalitha's demise. In terms of administration, as in fair degree of independence to well-meaning bureaucrats, and handle the crisis in terms of the floods and Hurricane Nivar and even the COVID reasonably well. They have also loosened their purse strings fairly liberally in the last 1.5 years. Gave succor to those who are seriously affected by the pandemic. But such is the nature of politics in Tamil Nadu, as in a sense, 10 years of anti-incumbency and personal charisma and few alliance blunders. As in 2-3 of them, as in a sense, if the NDA had got, it's not an NDA, it's a ADMK-led alliance, if they had got their equations right. For example, the Krishna Swamy and this thing, even Sasikala or AMMK, etc. if they could bury their hatchet, it could have, as in the sense, come within the striking distance of a majority.
Okay.
But those were missed buses that resulted, that proved costly. I think that was a calculated call, my view, by EPS, that he would rather be a head of a party that lost rather than feel threatened to his leadership in a party that has a reasonable chance of winning. That's a call that he had taken. And as in the sense, it's at the end of the day politics, as in, so.
Okay.
So those are my views at the overall level. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, Suren.
Yeah, so Venkatesh and Muthu have kind of made a fairly reasonable assessment across the board. So I would like to restrict myself to, as categorized, Assam was no surprise. Kerala was no surprise. West Bengal was a very shock for the BJP, where Pondicherry was a reasonably good positive, and Tamil Nadu was overall positive. From where they were 0 MLAs in the assembly to 4 MLAs. Yeah. And contrary to what people say that this was piggybacking on AIADMK, it's my assessment that these people won on their strength of their own personal ability to gather votes.
Okay.
Having said that, I'll make a few comments restricted to Tamil Nadu. With respect to Tamil Nadu, BJP has not found that kind of traction due to a few factors that one may take. One factor is, of course, the bipolar situation. See, BJP cannot make much headway where there are two very strong regional parties, and one of the regional parties has to kind of make way for BJP to grow. Because that is how this has been the system, how it has worked in Andhra Pradesh, it has worked in Bengal, and so on.
Karnataka is an exception.
If you take Tamil Nadu, the BJP always, Karnataka is an exception there, of course. If you take Tamil Nadu, the BJP comes here after having used a lot of playbooks and tried and tested approaches elsewhere. So people here, the politicians here, are observing what you're doing, right? If you look at the TV channels and the discussion of experienced political observers in Tamil Nadu, they will give you a very good indication of how things are going in Bengal. They will give you a good indication of how things are going in Maharashtra. So it's not just, professional people, advisors. There is a long tradition of people from the journalistic fraternity, academics, who are very strongly aligned with the Dravidian movement and who will advise individual leaders as well as advise parties. And so they tell them this is how things are going to play out, and they're always well prepared in advance of what the BJP is going to do. Having said that, Pondicherry has been a proof of concept, right? If you look at, a prototype, so to speak, of how you could move ahead, the same way as it has moved in the smaller northeastern states, the BJP has made a win, has secured a tactical win in Pondicherry, and they will hope to scale it up in Tamil Nadu also, probably in 2026. So that's my take on the May 2nd results.
Okay. So I thought that the way ADMK was like getting panned across by analysts, so it was a positive surprise. I thought that ADMK did well.
ADMK always fails in the opinion polls, and DMK always succeeds in the opinion polls. That's the story of Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
But this time I have only one grouse with the ADMK.
Okay.
Which was that they could have taken far more concrete steps to finish the DMK. Okay, now to come and say that DMK is corrupt, it is a party of rogues, it's a party of gundas. When you have not even filed an FIR for 10 years against any of these actors, shows you must also understand that my theory always has been that whatever said and done, DMK and ADMK has a tacit alliance amongst themselves. That is something that analysts, very keenly following analysts, will understand. That if if only Karunanidhi, the joke in Tamil Nadu is, if Karunanidhi had an access to the phone inside his grave, he would have destabilized the EPS government the moment Jayalalitha died. But unfortunately, he didn't have a phone from inside. So he couldn't destabilize the meaning. That Stalin, it was a government that was on daily wages for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and it continued.
And it continued also. And Stalin did not take any concrete steps to destabilize. Though first tried, and there was a by-election to 20 odd seats, and they had to resign and they had to do some sort of a attempted coup. And EPS's followers had to contest, and they had to win 8 seats to retain power. And they just won 8 seats. So, okay. So I'm not saying it was contrived and it was mathematically done.
Match fixing.
But it's a remarkable coincidence that one cannot miss. Because I have clients who are very close to the DMK. I have clients who are very close to the ADMK.
Yeah.
And I was the one who wrote the 2009 manifesto for ADMK also.
Oh my God.
Okay. So I have friends there, friends who are very close to me there also. Now, this particular assessment, which is a far deeper assessment of Tamil politics, that ADMK and DMK have a tacit alliance and they combine as a vote bank to around 65 to 70% of the votes totally. That is lost on BJP. BJP is always looking at 40, 30, 45, 25, so on and so forth. But there is an anti-national party vote of 70%. And between DMK and ADMK, the people who vote for DMK do not have a great love for DMK. They have a greater hatred for ADMK.
Yeah. Okay.
And likewise, people who vote for ADMK don't have greater love for ADMK.
They just hate
DMK. They have a
DMK.
greater hatred for DMK. So there is a substantial amount of negative votes also. That is why it's very difficult to fathom the electoral results in Tamil Nadu because of the prevalence of these negative votes. So whatever my leader does or doesn't deliver, I will vote for him for a simple reason. I hate the other party.
The other leader. Okay.
Yeah. So that is there. So this was countered by Jayalalitha's charisma.
Okay.
But ADMK was missing that charisma, which used to draw a good portion of this neutral votes or even positive votes. But that was missing in this election. And despite what Muthu says about the performance of EPS, the general feeling was that ADMK was also corrupt. The corruption factor, though it may not be palpable, it was not pandemic corruption. It was definitely, there was corruption and there was nothing to be done about this corruption. So you had a hawa about Chandrababu Naidu. You had a hawa about, say, somebody like Fadnavis, that they were all, they all meant business. They were very sharp. They gave a lot of weightage to business, growth, development, infrastructure project. They took care of welfare also. That hawa was missing. People were calling EPS government, just what Muthu says, that there was nothing negative. But that was not sufficient to cross the bar. He needed to do something more. That something more was missing.
I agree. So now looking at,
I'd like to make this thing to that, small addendum to that. See, the last 2-3 elections, right, from 2006 onwards, there was always a third group in the fray. See, there is a solid DMK vote bank which never goes away from them. There is a ADMK vote bank which never goes away from them.
Correct.
See, the massive swings is always due to the swing voter who keeps alternating between these two.
Correct.
So in 2006 and in 2011 and in 2016, 2011, Jayalalitha, 2006, there was the swing vote was to some extent captured by Vijaykanth, right? In 2011, Vijaykanth aligned with Jayalalitha, did an alliance with Vijaykanth, and she captured the government in 2011. In 2016, there was the usual anti-incumbency, but the anti-incumbency vote, which would have gone to a third, to one of these two, what happened was there was an alliance called the of 5 smaller parties which went out and took the swing vote away with them. Therefore, Jayalalitha retained her core constituency. DMK retained their constituency. Jayalalitha had to just do that additional, 2 to 3% more.
Little run, yeah.
Just that little more. And she won. And again, in 2021, if you look at it, the third parties,
they are gone now.
They are all mostly, silent.
They are vanished.
I mean, they've been pacified. And the remaining splinters, who actually had some vote bank, have aligned with either of these two groups. And again, the margin of victory has been 2,000 or 3,000 votes in nearly 40 constituencies this time.
So I mean, of course, coming to our next question, and before that, I would like to make a small observation: is that in most of the states now, the major votes are captured by 2 parties these days. You look at Bengal, it is same, but I mean that's a different topic. But that polarization is happening now. Anyway, so coming to Tamil Nadu specifically, what is the future for BJP from here? What should they do? Is there any local leadership coming up? Just as Venkat sir said in the start, they started that Vel Yatra and then they went back. So how the future looks for BJP? What should they do? We'll start with MR sir.
I would prefer to listen to Muthu because he has been silent.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. See, first of all, I think the central leadership's focus to actually build a strong organization should be there.
Okay.
To my mind, as of now, it is not there. They are just happy with the aligning or this thing with either of these parties. And
only
Muthu, you gone on mute.
But thereafter, only during the election the Josh that comes. Thereafter, there is just Tamil Nadu is not in the radar of the central BJP leadership. Okay, so that is my first observation. Second observation, as in instance, I like to draw this comparison between, say, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka.
Okay.
Say, for example, Yediyurappa and L. Ganesan probably started their political career in their respective states almost in the same time. Look at how Yediyurappa has built the party in BJP versus L. Ganesan or the BJP has squandered it in Tamil Nadu. This thing also had, between Congress and JDS, there are 2 large parties are there, but still BJP was able to edge the 2 and was able to capture the power. But such kind of grassroots level build-up is not there. What I am observing in the last 3-4 years, the concerted efforts have been made, in the sense, the image of it being a North Indian party or it being a Brahmin party, etc., have been largely, to some extent, they have been countered with. For example, the leadership, Murugan, bringing in Murugan, and other leadership also across the states. Very few Brahmin leaders are there in the state level. So they have been able to expand their appeal to a slightly wider set of population. But more stronger focus, they have, for example, nurtured some few new leaders like that Annamalai, who made a lot of waves. A lot of waves in the media and social media, but not so much in his constituency, lost narrowly on the ground. But that is still fine. You have to start somewhere and nurturing such strong younger leadership, so that you will have at least a say in 2026 or 2031, etc. But so nurturing more younger leadership, more focus in Tamil Nadu across throughout the period, not just during the elections. Correct. Are a couple of things that straight away comes to my mind. See, the usual Hindutva politics has not worked in Tamil Nadu. They have to tweak their approach to suit this thing. What MR said about the Vel Yatra was a disappointment as in the way it started. See, the funny thing is that the main principal opposition in this time, DMK, gives enough and more opportunities every day. Okay, so it's just that these days are not able to capitalize on those opportunities. Forget about opportunities now, as in what DMK or its leaders and DK leaders have said about so many things about Hindus and Hindu gods, etc. in the past. As in today, you cannot even think of uttering such words anywhere in any other state. As in bringing that out and making them either disown such leaders or put them on a back foot, as in could have been done in a lot more concerted way, which BJP missed in a very big way. So those are few things comes to my mind, top of the mind.
So we'll go to Suren and then back to MR sir. Suren.
See, if you ask me, the people in the Tamil Nadu BJP unit have spent many decades, working here and so on.
Right.
There are two things that I would like to, there are a couple of things that I would like to point out. One is that they have, it's the same thing that though I wouldn't like to say it, it's the same kind of attitude that you find in the Tamil Nadu Congress unit as well as the Tamil Nadu BJP unit.
Okay.
They are content to ally with one of the or the other of the regional parties.
Okay.
Do their, have their own small realm and sphere of politics. It's basically the level of ambition for leadership in the state. So I would say that because it is not something that I don't know these people, but from what you observe over the last 20-25 years, I don't see that ambition to actually get ahead there, because there are avenues are available for growth at the national level, right? So you can become something in the BJYM, or you can become something in the Mahila Morcha, or in the intellectual cell or something like that, and get somewhere in the national level. So why would I try too hard at the regional level? Plus the second thing that I would like to point out is the ground organization, the cadre who are going to stand in the councillor election, who is going to win the Panchayat board election, and who are going to be your councillors and your Panchayat board presidents. That cadre is still a long way from being built up in the state. It's only now that if you go into smaller towns or villages, you see alongside one DMK and one ADMK flag, you will see one BJP flag. It's only the last 5 years that we actually see it. Till now, I mean, a BJP flag you would never see. Probably you would see in Coimbatore, probably in a few places in Kanyakumari and in a few neighborhoods of Chennai. That's all. Now you see it in smaller towns and villages also. So that ground cadre is building, but it will take a long time and a lot of hard work. You have to go and fight in the local elections. You have to be in the local ground politics, ensure that people's ration card issues are sorted out. Things like that.
Yeah. So, MR sir, would you like to take that?
Yeah. See, if you look at the 5 states which went to polls, if you count Puducherry also the state where BJP won is the state in Assam where you had somebody called Hemanta Biswa Sarma.
Local leadership.
Absolutely local leader, homegrown leader, and the chief minister, outgoing chief minister, was also from the local state. Absolutely provided dual power barrel gun. Take Bengal, you had Adhikari coming and joining BJP 6 back or 3-4 months back. So these were not homegrown leaders. These were who had an organic acquisition, merger karke le liya. Use a corporate term. But in Tamil Nadu, you don't acquire anybody. You don't allow anybody to grow from the home ground. Okay. And you think Narendra Modi and Amit Shah ji both have to come all the way from Delhi and deliver a seat? This you try 1 billion times, you will never win elections. Unless you have a Hemanta Biswa Sarma, unless you have a Adhikari here, it is not going to happen.
Yes.
Now, my prognosis is DMK in power will be very vulnerable position. ADMK out of power will be in a very vulnerable position.
Oh, okay.
What was the glue for ADMK? The glue for ADMK was power.
Correct. Correct.
But DMK is a family organization which is in power.
Yeah.
So Kanimuri does not see eye to eye with Alagiri, who does not see eye to eye with Stalin. Stalin's son does not see eye to eye with Stalin's son-in-law. So it is a typical Hindu undivided family or a Hindu divided family. I would put it this way. So there are, though they may not like the word Hindu, they are divided.
Yeah.
Now there are fault lines. I don't pray that these fault lines should develop,
Right.
but the fault lines can develop. Now, you must be sharp enough to acquire leaders from DMK. You must be sharp enough to acquire leaders from ADMK. Now, Vijayakant's party is now more or less gone.
It is decimated.
We must try to acquire. We must try to acquire parties like Kamal Hassan's party, which has evaporated.
Yeah.
Now, the shortcut that was thought about was, hum kuch nahi karna hai. All that we have to be supinely indifferent. We will have a guy called Rajinikanth who will come, who will win election and give it to us, and we will simply have to do, clap our hands, and somebody will win the state. So this is a trait that has gone into the BJP psyche now. That either Amit Shah will win, or Modi will win, or Edappadi Palaniswamy will win, or Rajinikanth will win. But we will not do anything.
Correct.
So this mindset, if it is broken and if it is actually remedied, and this requires enormous, this is the core of the issue.
Yeah.
The core of the issue that the leaders want piggyback. Now I will tell you for 24, the formula will be, we will take 6 seats, let ADMK take 30 seats,
Okay.
and the balance 3 seats plus 1 in Pondicherry, 4 seats, we will give it distributed to others. Now,
Small parties.
So the same 6 people who lost last time will already make this formula so that they will contest. And if there is a wave in favor of ADMK,
They will win.
they will win. So the party be damned. So they don't want. So you will see there is no organic acquisition with the party. So there are. See, it is not. That is what I said. There are a lot of writers, intellectuals, actors, industrialists, professionals, political activists, journalists, army people, police people, IAS retired, all these want to join the BJP.
Yeah.
But the BJP does not want to take them because the leaders don't want to give space to them.
Yeah.
They have decided that assembly may 20 seats, MP may 6 seats. This is our maximum ambition. And I think Suren used the word ambition. That is our, the biggest ambition that we have is to contest 6 seats. We don't want to win these 6 seats, God forbid. We want to contest 6 seats and 20 seats in the assembly. This is our outer limit of ambition.
Yeah. So ambition is indeed very important.
Lacking.
Yeah.
And the ambition is the core for any political party. The hunger.
And for any organization, everything. I mean, without that,
hunger is very important. Yeah. And so there is a huge lack of hunger. So there is absolutely, a state of drift that follows.
Yeah. Perfect, sir. So I mean, from north, there are always this mystique is about Tamil Nadu. And that one mystique is that this Dravidian and Aryan thing, I mean, just keeps on bothering me so much. And it also bothers many from our area. So my question is that this Aryan Dravidian thing, along with the Hindi language, these are kind of firewalls which I still think that BJP hasn't been able to breach. So what do you say? I mean, is BJP still looked upon as a Hindustani Aryan party, or things that change over a period of time? I mean, how does the thing look now?
Now, Muthu, let him go first. Muthu has suddenly...
Yeah, sure. No, I'm here. Low network, so just switch off the video.
You are like the BJP party. You are heard but not...
You are heard but not...
No. Okay. So to answer your question, this the split of this Aryan versus Dravidian, etc., is only in the realm of intellectual discussions and in social media quarrels. I don't think in voting pattern it has any impact at all.
Okay.
Because neither party, I don't think the DMK can claim any particular difference in this thing case vis-a-vis ADMK or anything of that nature. I think it's quite funny that he changed his Twitter bio profile to Dravidian stock, belonging to Dravidian stock or something like that. I think we should have changed it to belonging to the laughing stock. Leaving that aside, as in a sense, it is only purely on intellectual discussions.
Okay.
I don't
Then
think that
that-
kind of a divide or this thing is seen in the voting patterns.
That's such a relieving answer, because it is such a mystic land, Tamil Nadu. And but I always said कि यार मैं यहाँ North Indian हूँ तो मुझे आने नहीं देंगे, मतलब I always thought कि ऐसा तो नहीं होगा मेरे साथ. But that's really so. We will go to Suryan and then maybe MR sir third. Suryan.
Yeah. So I'll point out certain paradoxes here, right?
Okay.
The narrative versus reality. Okay.
Okay.
Narrative is that Tamil people don't want to learn Hindi, and Hindi will somehow come and engulf and destroy the Tamil language. The
Correct.
truth is that Dakshin Bharat Hindi Prachar Sabha produces lakhs of children who are learning Hindi, and there is a huge demand for Hindi teachers in smaller towns who will teach Hindi, right? Second, the narrative is that Tamil Nadu is for Tamilians and Tamilians only rule themselves and so on and so forth. But if you look at all the leaders in the pantheon of, like the, if you take Periyar E.V. Ramaswamy was a Kannada speaking person. If you take M.G. Ramchandran was a Malayali. Jayalalitha's roots, her mother came from Nellore, her father came from Mysore. Karunanidhi's family, the family's roots, origins are supposed to have been somewhere near Nellore. As Muthu pointed out, they were playing, they were celebrating their victory. And most of the leaders, Vijay is actually a Telugu, Vai Gopal Swami, Vaiko is a Telugu, and but people say that, so there is an image.
Rajini himself is a Maharashtrian. Rajini himself is a Maharashtrian.
Rajinikanth is a Maharashtrian. He's a Maharashtrian from.
Most of the heroines are from North in Tamil cinema.
And they'll
not forget that.
You can't forget that. All the heroines they want to put in here in their movies are all from the North. So there is So there is this. Plus, if you look at this, you will find the same guy who's a very religious people, right? Who are very religious people. They will go to Murugan Raman temple, Ramar Koil, Murugan temple, everywhere, and they don't really bother too much when some leader goes on the stage and starts abusing Hindu gods. You will see the same leader abusing Hindu gods. The people in his family will be going to all the temples, following every single tradition and everything. So all of this narrative, this Aryan Dravidian, this atheism, this Tamil pride, all of this is just shadow boxing. It's just for show. The whole thing, when it comes to it, if you look at it, electoral politics here, it is cash, caste, charisma, 3 C's. Right? The most important is cash. Second is caste. Right? Third is charisma. Charisma also, they will say, without Jayalalitha, without Karunanidhi, how can an election happen? How can anybody win without? How can the ADMK win without Jayalalitha? Well, they have won 80 plus seats without Jayalalitha. Right? How can the ADMK exist? How can the government exist without Jayalalitha? Well, they run the government reasonably well. Not just survive, they ran okayish. I mean, I won't really call it a bad government or a lame duck government. They ran reasonably competently, right? So this charisma is the third. It's actually, people believe that, charisma is such a huge factor, but charisma is only the third factor. In my opinion, cash is the biggest factor. How much cash, how consistently you can distribute, and how it gets. I mean, in elections, if a particular locality people do not get their cash for votes, they will go on saying why I didn't get my money. So that's my take on the story, electoral story, and the narrative story.
MR sir.
See, in Punjab they say, "Jo bole so nihal."
Jo bole so nihal.
Yeah. In Tamil Nadu, we will say, "Jo hyper bole so nihal."
Jo hyper bole so nihal.
So this Tamil pride, atheism, all these are part of a narrative.
Yeah.
Now, the narrative is also that every North Indian wants to dominate South. South is a
Yeah.
victim of finance commission. Tamil, the great ancient language, which is nothing but Shaivism and Vaishnavism if you take in reality.
Okay.
They suddenly want to appropriate Tamil literature and say this great Tamil literature has been, not given the pride of place by the government of India.
Okay.
And so Tamil is languishing, Tamilians are languishing,
Yeah.
and that an attempt is being made. And this is an attempt by the church. And the Norwegian church, or probably the Scandinavian church, wants to have a fault line beginning Tamil Nadu, Íழம் Tamilers, probably Malaysian Tamils, Singaporean Tamils. They see it as a larger Tamil nation that is probably they are sowing the seeds for it. And if you look at it, majority of those who speak of this Tamil nationalism owe their financial allegiance, if not anything else, to the church. Okay, Tamil cinema, which was supposed to be a very big cultural factor, and it was traditionally financed by financial houses or groups. So if you know, it is Vijayakant's movie, it was funded by one Router. So this was used to happen. But today, Tamil movies are getting funding from unknown sources.
Yeah.
And there is subtle, or probably even more than subtle, directions or scenes which depict that Tamils are in some sort of a pressure, or there is a domination by the North Indians. The villain will be what will euphemistically called a Punjabi, or a corporate czar from Bombay. These are subtle imagery that is being played out in Tamil cinema, which is a very popular one. Tamil media is an out and out Marxist one. It's a rabid Marxist media. Probably Muthuraman will be the only one from here, this part of the country, who would have some sense of national belonging. He must be the hopeless minority. I would say that.
No, sir. Sir, we have about 10 Tamil right-wing or nationalistic media organizations. However smaller big they are.
No, I'm only exaggerating it for the sake of it.
Just to put things in perspective, that's all.
No, I understand.
Sure.
Every viewer will understand it. I'm only exaggerating it for the effect of it.
To make the point,
Yeah. And the larger point is that there are political parties also here whose funding source, who are actually money laundering vehicles. So it is not that they have cinema, media, political parties are all money laundering vehicles. Unfortunately, if you talk to any BJP leader in the north, they don't understand this.
Yeah.
It is not their concern. And as I said, the ambition of the local BJP leadership is very truncated. So there are certain districts, there are certain areas in Tamil Nadu as well as in Kerala, which I fear are becoming as hostile as, say, Baramulla or Udhampur. They are all becoming so serious. Now, let me take Kerala for instance. Kerala is moving away from Congress.
Yeah.
The Kerala voters are moving away from the Congress in a significant way.
Correct.
What is happening? You are seeing the Erava community, you are seeing the Nair community adrift. And there is a third biggest community will be the Christian community. Okay. All the three are usually, at least the Nairs and the Christians usually end up supporting the Congress. The Eravas support the communists. Unless the BJP is able to penetrate these community, and from these community you are able to create leaders, correct. Kerala will always be a case where you will always promise that we will win 30 seats, then we will win 20% votes, then at least come se come 10% vote, then those seats to aa jayega. Then at the end of the day, we were expecting so many things, it didn't turn out. And we will do an introspection why it has not happened. Likewise, in Tamil Nadu, you don't have a typical Nadar chief, you don't have a Tevar chief. All these community, Pillaiwal, Gounder, we don't have dominant communities with leaders emanating from this. So unless we get these type of leaders, Murugan may be a leader of a particular community, or Annamale may be a community leader, but they must be able to win on their own without even the BJP symbol. That is the test of a community leader. So that is still not happening in Tamil Nadu. So when you ally with ADMK, one of the MLAs whom I met asked a very blunt question, that when I ally with the BJP, I'm sure to lose my Christian and the Muslim votes.
Yeah, Muslim votes, yeah.
But do I get any solid Hindu votes?
Hindu votes.
Now,
Kerala is a major problem, yeah.
No, Kerala may be one problem.
Tamil Nadu.
We are not creating. So this Dravidian narrative is basically a hogwash, as both my other learned panels are.
Correct.
It is a hogwash. It has no electoral weightage.
Okay.
But people, when they go, and I will give you a small statistic. This was pointed out by the current finance minister of Tamil Nadu, that the DMK opened the electoral form filling exercise on 5 days.
Okay.
But 90% of the people filed it on a particular day after Rahu Kalam during an auspicious Muhurtam.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. They are talking about anti-Hindu or anti-Hindu gods only as a platform speaking.
Correct.
Okay.
On the ground, the things are not like that.
Hardcore, it is a Hindu society.
Yeah.
Waiting for a Hindu party.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
but
I mean, that I hear so many times. This thing I'm hearing so many times, even as I told you, sir, that even Sri Gurumurthy ji always says this, that we need a Hindu party, out and out Hindu party in Tamil Nadu. So our
temples, you take the temples.
Yeah.
BJP never bothers about the temples in Tamil Nadu. Never means, I would say, there may be a leader or two who speaks about it, but as an agenda, it is not taken seriously.
It's just a perfectionary remark.
I have no views about other states, but Tamil Nadu, the temples are the soul of Tamil Nadu. In fact, the insignia of the Tamil Nadu government is a gopuram of a temple.
Wow, that's a very powerful statement.
So even today, Stalin's letterhead of Tamil Nadu government will have a gopuram.
Oh my God!
You can't change it.
And he abuses Hindus.
That is his politics. But what I'm saying is, if you realize this, I think we have a long way to go, and that will be but it's a road that can be traveled and the power can be captured.
Wonderful, wonderful. Excellent analysis. So our next question again is, related to temples and religion in a way, that there is another conundrum which, we fail to resolve from here, is that, as you said at the start of the program, that the highest per capita temple goer must be from Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
I fully agree with you. So the religiosity, Hindu religiosity in Tamil Nadu, and even to some extent in Kerala, is very high, but the number of converted people is also very high.
Yes.
So how do you resolve this conundrum? It's a strange kind of a paradox.
See, the problem is that even within the RSS, forget the BJP, even within the RSS, there was a doubt as to what they should do with regard to the Sabarimala verdict. Whether they accept it or whether they should reject it. Correct. There were even BJP leaders who were having confusion.
Confusion, yeah.
So that means for an ordinary Hindu, there was no confusion.
Okay.
See, please understand, for an ordinary Hindu, my barber, for instance, said a very simple thing. That, sir, during 4 or 5 days in a month, my wife does not even go near the puja for personal hygiene reasons. And I go and do the puja and light the lamp.
Correct.
Sir, we are in a single room apartment.
Oh,
but to that corner, my wife will not go.
Oh, amazing.
Now he says, what we are illiterates, semi-illiterates, we don't do this. How is it that the Supreme Court judge is doing this?
Oh.
Now see,
Smashing.
this is your society. This is your core of your strength.
Oh,
Okay. But even the BJP leaders strangely felt that women's emancipation,
Oh, that-
women's liberalism, ये कहाँ से इनको ये भूत हो गया कि
हाँ,
women's liberalism, feminism सब में. Point I'm emphasizing is, again repeatedly, that you play by the local society. In fact, if you go to a place called Samayapuram, which is around 15-20 kilometers away from Trichy, in the month of Adi, which falls in the month of August, July, August, you will find people walking from distant places to the temple, 70, 80, 100 kilometers they walk. People walk from here to Payani. People walk here to Tirupati.
yes.
People do padayatras during right from August, September till January, February. People take all sorts of yatras, and I'm sure both Naren and Suren and Muthu can bear me out. All
Yeah,
these
yeah.
things happen. Society is by and large a society that is a believing society. Society believes in God, godliness, but there is also an evangelical force,
Yeah, which is very powerful. Yeah.
which is powerful, and that has played for the last 30 years thanks to the fault line in Sri Lanka.
Fault
The
line in
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Huh?
Sri Lanka and Tamils problem has been converted into a Tamil problem, converted into a Tamil problem for Tamils in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
Understand?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so there has to be, and I have gone to Sri Lanka several times, met people there. The Sri Lankan Tamils don't have any, they fear only one person in life, it is Vaiko.
Yeah, Vaiko. Okay.
That they fear that Vaiko should not interfere in their domestic politics. Baki sab unko koi problem nahi hai. But Vaiko thunders from here sitting in Tamil Nadu that he will solve the problem of Tamils of Sri Lanka.
Oh,
So this
okay.
grand Tamil identity is basically a church idea.
Oh.
And Mr. Malhotra, अपना जो writer है ना,
Rajiv Malhotra.
Rajiv
Malhotra.
Malhotra. Rajiv Malhotra.
has in his book Fault Lines dealt with this, and I have done some independent work where I know for a fact that church is working very heavily, and it was behind the Kudangulam agitation, and virtually the entire coast
Yeah.
comprising of fishermen has been taken over by the church. So these are all serious issues.
Very dangerous.
No, even the usually reticent Manmohan Singh had to openly say that foreign
Yes.
interference in Kudangulam
Kudangulam.
thing. Very
Kudangulam,
rarely
yeah.
he accepts that. Yeah.
So these things are not that the society can support BJP up to a point. But for instance, if the BJP takes the Kudangulam, finishes off the church funding and demonstrates it, I am sure that it will have a much greater electoral dividend. There are 100 different things that the BJP can do and take.
Yeah.
Even
Again,
Sterlite, for instance, as in they couldn't take a very strong stance on Sterlite, as in they let the
Yes.
factory close down.
Yeah, it was very
Actually,
bad. It was horrendous.
Which is as in which had a serious dent on the confidence of people on
Yeah.
the ADNK, on
Correct.
BJP, as in particularly the businessmen, etc. I think it kind of gave a veto to the church eventually for any large projects
Exactly.
in future.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
think that's a
Yeah.
very sad development.
Okay. So I mean, Muthu has answered that when he just did was talking. So Suren, I mean, the question was this conundrum is like is there? I mean, this is the most religious society. Plus, but the church is
Yes.
very powerful.
See,
So I remember your article, 12.5% wala. But so I would like to just maybe quickly want to take on that.
See, I'll take a little bit of time over this.
Okay,
Because
please
this
do,
is something on which I've done a little bit of study.
Correct.
See, let us take the Muslim population in TN. Okay, the Muslim population in TN, it never had the kind of cleavage between the Hindu society the way it was in the erstwhile Pakistan region, or all the horrors of partition never visited Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
So it was largely bypassed bypass Tamil Nadu, and that polarization and the politics of jihadi politics was non-existent till the 80s. Right? In the 80s, paradoxically, right, people say that jihad and jihadi politics grows in, poverty and illiteracy and all that. Paradoxically, in the 80s, the Muslim community started doing very well financially, started doing well in education. On all indicators, the Muslim community in Tamil Nadu started doing well. And that's when the seeds of jihad were sown in Tamil Nadu. Right? So now what has happened is there has been a transition in the Muslim society, in Tamil Muslim society, between the 80s to now, when the jihadi elements, in my opinion, the jihadi elements peaked too early. They peaked in the time of the Coimbatore bomb blast in the late 90s and the early 2000, 2001 period. They peaked at that time when they didn't have the mass numbers. They hadn't captured the institutions. They weren't, prosperous enough, and they didn't have the numbers either. So in that sense, the jihadis have peaked early, and it's mostly a fast dissipating movement. 6% is the population of Muslims in Tamil Nadu. Right? There are 234 assembly seats. If you look at it proportionally, there should be how many Muslims MLAs? There should be 14 Muslim MLAs.
Correct.
There are only 6 Muslim MLAs in the assembly. And out of these 6 Muslim MLAs, 3 of them are regular temple goers. Okay. Mastan, he is the Minister of Minority Affairs in the current DMK government. Mr. Mastan, even before the election, he donated 11,000 rupees to the Ram Janmabhoomi temple building.
I read that.
To Vishwa Hindu Parishad. Right? So, which means the jihadi movement peaked early, and it is passing Tamil Nadu by. And with increasing prosperity and integration and so on, I don't think it is a serious threat. Jihadi threat is not very serious in Tamil Nadu.
Correct.
Now, let us take the threat of the church. The church is actually split into 2 parts. The Protestant CSI, the established churches. There are 2 established churches, Protestant CSI and the Roman Catholic Church. Both of them are established, very long established churches. Right? And during the British government, they had long land grants and built the institutions, schools and so on. And during the long period of the DMK, ADMK period also, and right from the time of Kamaraj itself, they got a lot of help. I mean, they utilized all the facilities. They had the established structures, and they utilized the facilities to grow in terms of institutional strengths, in terms of schools, hospitals, colleges, and so on. But now what has happened is, in terms of organic growth, right? They're in fact lagging behind the rest of the larger Hindu population. In terms of inorganic growth, what has happened is the caste divisions inside the church ensure that there is a small caste elite, right? The CSI is a certain caste have occupied the niche, top elite positions in the RC and the CSI churches. And actually, they are not interested in converting, because if they convert and add more people, it means they have to share these assets with more people. The same resources, same power, same assets have to be shared with more people. What they want to do is they exert influence in other ways, right? They exert influence through the media, through the cinema. They exert influence by being able to influence the course of the politics by doing this thing on the ground, on the agitations, and in a sense funding the protest cottage industry. Right? What happens is the DMK is very good at riding the chaos, agents of chaos. Right? Like the Congress, the DMK has the skill of riding the agents of chaos to power. And then Karunanidhi was a past master at keeping the agents of chaos under control. Power. See, when they are in power, things will be very different. The media is now singing the praises of the government. Right? All the protesters. See that Sterlite, all the licenses for Sterlite were signed when DMK was in power. Right? So there is
that's the Congress formula. There's the Congress formula.
So that is the dynamic which will play out. Longer term, the church's problem will have to be countered by building up and supporting the Hindu institutions. Which means the temples. The temples, the mutts, they have to be supported so that they can build hospitals, build schools. so that
Yeah.
you have parity in your
Yeah.
institutional strength.
So, incidentally, our last question is about. I mean, it has been a fantastic discussion, so engrossing. We come to our last question. Our last question is about free temple movements. A free temple movement. I mean, the problem is that BJP doesn't speak about free temple movement in Maharashtra or in Delhi or in UP, but they speak about free temples in Tamil Nadu. So I was happy. मैंने बोला चलो कहीं तो they are not doing it. अच्छा, they are
No,
not.
no.
अच्छा, okay.
One or two leaders may be doing
Okay.
so.
Correct.
But
it's
party,
okay.
I don't think they have any.
It's not a party line. It is not an associated.
It is not a party line. Okay.
In fact,
But now-
one Karnataka leader
Okay.
went on to suggest this in his Twitter handle
Okay.
that when we come to power, we will liberate. So his followers in Karnataka said, "But पहले Karnataka में करो, उसके बाद आप तमिलनाडु में बात
Absolutely.
करो."
Absolutely.
Okay. So the walking the talk in terms
Yeah.
of your belief that society must take over temples
Yeah.
is not there even at the lip sympathy level.
Yeah.
No. I think my sense is that flows from the Sang's own view. That,
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
what if it goes from government and falls in the hands of private profiteers and who hijack and exploit? At least with government, you can go and set up an inquiry or do all the ABCD. If it is in the private, that is in the sense, this is an ongoing debate across the.
Yeah,
spectrum.
it is.
It's not particular to Tamil Nadu,
Yeah.
but because the Sang's view is ambivalent on this, that
Correct.
flows down to the party also.
No, Muthu.
And, to my mind,
Muthu,
So
I would like to interject here. Sang's view is they are not for giving temple to a Brahmin. They are not. And I will send you across. I had a,
No.
forget about
Again,
Brahmin.
sorry. It has nothing to do
Government
with
getting out of temple is the only question.
management of temples.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Management
Now,
of temple. Go ahead, Mari.
no. This the whole thing is that the British also said whenever we were asking them to quit India, they said,
Yeah.
"What is the alternative dhacha आपके पास क्या है? What is the
हाँ, बराबर.
alternative?"
Okay.
So the same thing is being posed to us.
अच्छा,
That,
okay.
okay, when we want government to come out of the temples, what is the alternative you have? Because see,
Okay.
this HR and CE Act is all 70, 80, 100-year-old act in Tamil Nadu and all. So the traditional owners of the temple who are not Brahmins, please understand,
Okay.
Brahmins never owned the temple. These were all
Yeah.
privately controlled trustee level, which
Correct.
may be a Chettiar, which may be a Nada, which may be a Teva,
Yeah.
which may be a Pillewal. There could be a number of communities which was running the trustees. Even today, it is being done like that only. But there is also a EO, there is also a government structure which puts in
Turf
even,
fights.
that is what is the issue here. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you withdraw, if the government withdraws, my view and many of us sincerely believe that there will be rough weather for 3 to 5 years.
Correct.
And it will automatically stabilize. And there will be people like Muthu who will be drawn into the temple management, who are genuine bhaktas of the temple, and
Correct.
water will find its own level sooner than later.
Yeah. Yes.
No, exactly my view. And have these debates among the nationalist side friends as well, on other states as well as in Tamil Nadu. As in, see, these are all intergenerational assets over a period of time. As in, even before British had come, who was handling this when Mughals were ruling?
Yeah.
Who were handling this when Marathas were ruling? Who were handling this when British
No, the
were
temple
ruling?
pujari.
Those are
Yeah.
questions. Yeah. So I'm sure the society will find its way to manage it, and equitably so. So the government can be there as a watchman at the gate.
Correct.
It cannot come into the management. That's my view.
Yeah.
So my take on this,
to
first,
Surendra.
my take on this, first thing, if you look at the enormous assets, 5.25 lakh acres was there. It has now 50,000 acres have disappeared in the last 20 years to 4.75 lakh acres, and nearly some 1 crore square feet of commercial property. 44,000 temples, right? What it represents is assets. It represents power, right?
Yeah,
Which politician will be willing to get rid of this power?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if he's a Hindu, if he's a temple going Hindu, if he's an
Yeah.
atheist, whatever he is, a politician seeks power,
Yeah.
right? So whoever is going to, nobody will be willing to let go of this power or let go of a chance of getting at this power. So the solution is not a political solution because the politician will never let go of it. The solution has to come from society, and the social solution has to be forced upon the politician.
Yeah,
He has to be given an incentive to fall in line with society.
Yes.
And that has to come from society only. That is my take.
Brilliant point. Brilliant point.
The second thing that I frequently, but think about is that, see, within the existing HRC rules itself, there are nearly 37,000 temples which the government does not have the wherewithal to even conduct one puja per day. Why are you even keeping that temple?
Yeah.
Right? You can't even run one puja per day. Why are you even keeping that temple? So what is the solution? Within the HRCA Act itself, there is a means of, you have to constitute a board of trustees. So why don't you ask local people to come and say that here is this temple, there is no money here, there is only out of your bhakti, you come and take over this temple and run this temple, you hand it over to them. The people who come there are not going to be people who are coming for the money, because my temple itself doesn't have any money. So you take those in 37,000 temples or whatever and ensure, and the only thing you say that there must be adequate representation from all members of the community. There must be representation from OBCs, from forward caste, OBC, SC, whoever is the ST, if there are ST people there, there should be from them. There should be some representation from the hereditary trustees, some women, whatever you want to put, you ensure that it is representative and give it over to a board of trustees. Then you come and look at the big temples with the large assets and all that.
Correct. We can have one government representative also on the board. I mean, why not? We can have that also.
Yes, of course. See, at the end of the day, if something gets lost in the temple, it is the government. That is, the police has to take care of that.
Correct.
Right? If two trustees in the temple have a misunderstanding, the courts, that is the judiciary and the state, has to resolve that.
Yeah.
So
wonderful.
There will be a role for the government. It's not that you cannot let go of the government. The government will have to submit audit reports and all that. Yeah.
And so nice to have it. It was a wonderful discussion, and I remember my days when I used to stay in Chennai for a while. It was wonderful, and I wish to travel sometime after this virus has gone. And I have spent some time with Muthu also there, and it was wonderful. We had our friend DV also there. So we'll hope to catch you again. And thank you so much.
Look forward to those good times.
Thank you so much, MR sir. Thank you so much, Muthu. And thank you so much, Suren. Indic Vichar is indebted to you for this. Friends, I know we know.
Thank you very much. Nice pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Friends, we know you like our videos, but please share them, please like them, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. That's our only inspiration.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Dhanyavad.
Thanks, Ajay. Nice talking, MRV and Suren.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.